Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on understanding the total economic value of a fully managed desktop as a service, or DaaS. AWS is delighted to have Forrester Infrastructure and Operations Analyst Will McKeon-White and Forrester Total Economic Impact Consultant Adi Sarosa presenting today. And my name is Yvonne Dresser, and I'm a go-to-market specialist with the AWS End User Computing team. So over the next 60 minutes, we will cover the following topics. First, Will McKeon-White will share Forrester's perspectives on the state of the end user computing business, which will provide you with insights into where end user computing service delivery stands today and where it is headed. Next, I will talk about VDI modernization considerations and provide a brief overview of the AWS end user computing services as a modern VDI approach. And then Adi Sarosa will walk you through results from a recent TEI Total Economic Impact study of AWS end user computing services conducted by Adi and Forrester. And this will give you some insights into the business value of migrating from traditional on-prem VDI to AWS's fully managed cloud VDI services. And then finally, we'll open up the webinar to you, the audience, for any questions. And so with that, let's go ahead and get started by turning the mic over to Will McKeon-White at Forrester.
Thanks, Yvonne. My name is Will McKeon-White, analyst on Forrester's I&O team, and we're here to talk a bit about the state of end-user computing and how we believe you should be building your strategy for the next few years. IT strategies really aren't meeting employee or strategic expectations today. From the device perspective, chances are a lot of these issues are directly caused by or on-device experience, whether it's the applications on the device, whether it's the actual performance of the device itself. This has to be a focal point for organizations going forward. And also on the IT admin side, we're increasingly going to be seeing the actual administration requirements for these environments getting increasingly more complex. Because, as we're all aware, work from home is, or at the very least, work from everywhere, or work from anywhere, is here to stay. 300% is the expected increase we anticipate seeing permanently for full-time remote workers. This doesn't even necessarily take into account the additional people or additional population that will be doing sometimes remote work. What this means is organizations need to be planning for both in-office as well as at-home employees that can really move everywhere and anywhere that they need to in order to accomplish their work and to stay engaged and to ensure that they can be productive in their role. And further complicating this equation is the fact that multi-device is now mainstream. While the adoption of smartphones in the workplace isn't necessarily anything new, we are seeing an increase in tablets and actually purpose-specific mobile-connected devices, and even things like wearables, virtual reality augmentations, or virtual reality and augmented reality devices. This is only going to make the management of these environments even more complicated. And even when it comes to things like the actual operating systems on computers, 76% now say of organizations now say they're managing 2+ operating systems in their organization. This doesn't even include the multiple different devices that employees are using today. And this doesn't include what do employees actually want or where are employees actually spending their time. Because as we see here, this is going to be an increased expectation that organizations support all these devices because this is where people are useful today, even if they're not necessarily spending a majority of their day on something like a tablet or on a wearable. By and large, these are making up a larger and larger proportion of where employees are productive. And so when you factor into things like there's multiple different operating systems also in the mix for even things like a PC form factor, this is I'll say exponentially increasing problem that organizations need to understand that they're going to be facing, as well as start to plan around. because if users are having a poor experience on one device, chances are the overall experience on the rest of their devices won't be up to, in their view, up to par. So we've seen organizations start to take on a few different approaches here, but one of them that we see actually growing in popularity for a variety of different reasons is actually VDI. And so here we actually see VDI is actually fairly rapidly growing in proportion of end user compute. We see that the overall proportion of devices that are comprised by virtualized devices has grown by 2% from 2020 to 2021. This isn't data necessarily on this page, but by and large, we do see this proportion increasing. And so while this doesn't seem like a lot on first glance, it's actually millions and millions of devices, because this is a 2% increase in proportion for all devices. So for everything used in the workforce today, or workplace today, we see VDI growing because of some of the reasons that we talked about, like the increase in security, as well as the increase in things like accessibility and the flexibility for organizations to meet multiple different device requirements and to provide a consistent work experience regardless of where somebody is. And so this is one of the ways where we see organizations providing their employees with this flexible compute strategy to provide them with the tools that they need in order to do their job, and to provide hopefully some administration, some ease of administration for this increasingly complex environment, because this is having some very real consequences on organizations today. For example, one healthcare provider in the United States was spending 1.5 million on break fix for devices alone. And while this is a bit of a high number, one of the really surprising elements of this was that break fix cost was mostly coming from the actual shipping cost that they were incurring to get employees' devices overnight when something would break. Because if there was a battery failure, if there was if the computer bricked itself, frankly, they would have to drop ship one of these devices to their employees and to ensure that they could still be productive, they could still do their job. And so instead of being able to do the traditional sort of IT support strategy of, hey, just pop on down, we can provide you with a loaner in the meantime, they had to ship these during the pandemic in order to ensure that, again, these employees could remain productive. What organizations need is ways to start ensuring that people can be productive regardless of the device that they use, because in this case it was they were relying on the local compute of the device in order to ensure that people could still be productive in this environment, and that they would that they had the tools they needed. Similarly, a large U.S. government organization found they needed to totally reimagine how they were actively managing devices during the early pandemic stages. So what they found was that the patches that they had to push to employees from a central management approach were multiple gigabytes. Needless to say, not everybody had the bandwidth in order to actually manage that, in order to actually accommodate some of these new patches that were coming down the line in order to ensure that their devices remained secured. So they needed new ways in order to actually accommodate for the security requirements of their organization. And they ended up taking it from a modern management approach, but other approaches like VDI as well can help you centralize the management of the environment and to reduce down the amount of actual updates that have to be patched or pushed to the device itself. And we see this actually impacting the core EUC strategy of a lot of organizations today. From one large global insurer, we heard from the EUC lead directly that they said they needed to get out of the device imaging business. They can't be drop shipping devices around the globe. They can't necessarily they can't be expected, in this case, to support the exact words were global distribution center as part of their IT practice. That wasn't something that they had the interest or the funds in order to keep managing. So instead, they changed how they were doing their device management and started to approach it from a personalized angle. What actual So for example, instead of everybody getting the same device, certain individuals would instead have a VDI instance, or certain individuals would have a specific type of device needed for their role. And we see this personalization actually taking a few different forms. According to the UC lead at a large retail chain, they're looking at this personalization, device personalization, or personalization as a way in order to improve the overall employee experience. They want to be competitive with FANGs or Silicon Valley firms. And so instead of taking that one size fits all compute approach, instead, they're actually trying to provide employees with the best possible experience and investing in high quality devices to give them an excellent day one out of the box, and understanding that this organization will do what they can in order to make sure that they have a good experience in their work. And so when it actually also comes to VDI, one of the interesting trends we've also been seeing is actually there isn't necessarily enough supply in a lot of organizations to meet the demand. Following the shift to work from home, a lot of organizations transitioned over to VDI in order to, again, to ensure that their environments were secured and to make sure people could be productive regardless of where they were. But there was a lot of organizations actually struggling to keep up with the VDI demand, which has led overall to an increase in the number of organizations pursuing a cloud VDI strategy, because it's easier to get up and running and overall provides them with more flexible resources in order to meet their organizational need. And so in summary, we see organizations actively investing in their end user compute strategy and end user compute environments to reduce that management requirements to really keep up with the demand for more devices, more operating systems in a distributed environment, to adapt long-term to this anywhere work strategy we see actively taking hold, and to finally provide a better employee experience, because fundamentally everything that you can do today, or every type of job, every type of position, everything that you do is in some way intermediated by technology. The more that you can have that portal through that technology is more you can improve the quality of that experience, the better device you can provide will actually ensure that your employees remain productive longer. Thank you very much. My name has been Will McKeon-White. Over to you, Yvonne.
Thanks so much, Will. Continuing on, let's talk a little bit about VDI modernization and enabling this modernization journey using AWS End User Computing Services. So to begin, AWS End User Computing, or EUC for short, delivers a variety of cloud-native workspaces to meet today's popular use cases. This could include persistent and non-persistent Windows desktops hosted on either Windows Server or Windows Client VMs. We also offer Linux-based persistent and non-persistent desktops. And if you just need to publish Windows apps, we offer that too. And now we offer a browser isolation service for secure access to internal web apps and SaaS apps. These cloud virtual desktop and app delivery options are based on the AWS EUC service portfolio, consisting of Amazon Workspaces for persistent, or often called dedicated VDI desktops. We also offer Amazon AppStream 2.0, a service for delivering non-persistent, or often called pooled VDI desktops and apps. And then we recently released Amazon Workspaces Web, which is for secure access to internal web and SaaS apps using browser isolation technology. So these EUC services are natively built on the AWS cloud with its known high security, reliability, and scalable architecture. And these services are available to end users located in virtually any geographic region. So some of the big use cases for AWS EUC services that we're seeing from our customers include contact centers and back office operations, where organizations are using AWS EUC to cost effectively deliver work from home and follow the sun operations, while at the same time protecting sensitive PII data, all in order to meet data privacy regulations. Another common use case is the contingent workers, which include third-party contractors and partners, where organizations have a need to quickly onboard and support new workers without buying, shipping, and managing devices. and instead are substituting company-owned devices with the use of contingent worker devices instead. We're also seeing organizations, and this can include ISVs, that have been modernizing their Windows apps by virtualizing them on AWS's AppStream 2.0 service, and doing this in order to deliver these apps to almost any device through a browser interface and without having to perform any costly application rewrites. And then another use case is delivering compute-intensive applications that traditionally require more powerful and more expensive endpoint devices to run. And along with that, the need for higher speed network access. And this is especially true for applications such as computer-aided design, business intelligence, and even some ERP applications. And our end-user computing services make it cost-effective to run these applications on the AWS cloud and then have end users access them from lower cost devices and over slower network links. And then there's school and universities that are increasingly looking to the cloud and AWS to transform their lab spaces and also lower IT operations and real estate costs. And with AWS EUC services, students are now able to access virtual computer labs in AWS, which means that they can learn anytime from their own device. And lastly, I'll talk about developers and testers. You know, they're constantly re-imaging their Linux or their Windows machines and installing daily software builds. And by implementing AWS EUC, developers and testers are able to quickly recreate their consistent development and test environments for rapid application development and end user acceptance testing. So moving on to VDI modernization, you know, organizations have several options when it comes to migrating from on-prem VDI to the cloud. There's the option to start new with a modern cloud-native managed service such as AWS EUC. Another approach is using traditional VDI vendors' cloud-based control plane service, plus a public cloud vendor's infrastructure as a service to build that total complete cloud VDI service. And then the third option is to simply rehost your on-prem VDI on a public cloud. And each of these options have their strengths and their weaknesses. So taking a look at this graph, starting from the left, a fully managed cloud VDI service basically abstracts away all of the infrastructure, the control plane and the host VMs. And this provides the most operational savings of the three options. You just select a region, an instance type, which is a bundle of compute, storage, and networking, all integrated, and then you just deploy. In the middle is the managed VDI control plane service, plus infrastructure as a service from a public cloud provider. This could be Citrix Cloud or VMware Cloud, plus AWS EC2 and storage, or even Microsoft's Azure Virtual Desktop Service, where the VDI control plane component is delivered as a managed service. But on the user VM side, you're expected to build that out from a variety of components, storage, compute, etc., and then test, deploy, and manage that as infrastructure. And then on the right, while rehosting your on-prem VDI on a public cloud allows you to stick with the VDI software and you'll eliminate your upfront CapEx and some operational overhead. As you can see on the graph on the left side, there remains quite a bit of operational overhead. And so expanding on this notion of fully managed cloud VDI services, the key business and technical benefits for migrating to AWS EUC include achieving greater technical agility and meeting business demands faster with the technology that easily enables rapid scale out and scale in of virtual apps and desktops, using native capabilities such as automated provisioning and deprovisioning and granular auto-scaling capabilities. Another is reducing VDI solution costs, which is really about replacing upfront VDI infrastructure and software expenditures with a more variable expense or consumption-based spend provided by what we call pay-as-you-go pricing model. And then capturing more IT productivity. Now that you can virtually eliminate the VDI infrastructure management, reduce the time-consuming capacity planning, and also easily automate the operational workflows using the AWS Cloud Platform of services, tools, and APIs is a real benefit. Lastly, organizations can lower their business risk. And they do that by benefiting from AWS's data centers and its network, which is architected to improve your ability to meet core security and compliance requirements, and also taking advantage of multiple availability zone and region deployments to help ensure high availability and business continuity of your virtual apps and desktops. And it's worth mentioning that AWS has been delivering cloud-native virtual desktops and apps as fully managed services for over 8 years, since 2014, much longer than any other solution provider in this space. So to illustrate AWS end-user computing success, helping organizations migrate from on-prem VDI to cloud service, I've got a couple of customer success stories I wanted to share with you. First is Capital One. Their on-premises VDI environment was reaching end of life, and increases in demand were requiring significant investment to their on-premises infrastructure. So AWS Professional Services worked with them to provide best practices and architectural guidance for an implementation of 5,000 workspaces from Amazon that would be scalable and durable by using multiple availability zones. And also Capital One integrated ServiceNow with Amazon Workspaces using AWS Service Catalog to automate workspaces provisioning and also help with governance requirements. Takeda Pharmaceuticals is another customer with an on-premises VDI environment that was experiencing increased demand and required additional investments to scale and also to maintain. There was ongoing support issues and process gaps with their on-premises VDI solution to put Takeda's regulatory compliance controls at risk. And AWS provided best practices in architecture, planning, and design for a global deployment of 6,500 Amazon workspaces across 3 regions. Carrier, another company, spun off as an independent entity, and they needed to migrate their infrastructure out of the former parent company's data centers within 9 months. High on the list of applications for migration were its financial management applications, including their payroll and their disbursements running on their VDI. And with this initial migration phase, 240 finance users and 70 applications were migrated from their on-premises VDI solution to AppStream 2.0. And this migration was completed on time with no disruptions to critical data processing during a monthly closeout of 16 concurrent payroll runs. Maximus is the last story. It's another VDI migration success story. Maximus, if you're not aware, they're a global BPO, and they had a leadership mandate to sunset their on-prem VDI solution that was supporting 3,000 contact center users. But when the COVID pandemic hit in early 2000, they quickly pivoted to enable their employees as well as their third-party contractors to work remotely by deploying 16,000 Amazon workspaces across 3 regions. And they did this in just 3 months. And because of this success, today Amazon Workspaces is Maximus's default desktop strategy as their business grows. So these customer success stories demonstrate that it can be easier and faster than you think to migrate to AWS EUC services. So at this point in the webinar, we're going to transition to a discussion of the Forrester TEI study on AWS EUC, and that's led by Adia Sarosa, the Forrester TEI consultant responsible for conducting the study. So Adia, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Adi Sarosa. I am a consultant here at Forrester in our Total Economic Impact practice. So at TEI, we work with technology companies of all shapes and sizes to develop business cases that quantify the costs and benefits that customers experience from their technology investment. So in this webinar, I'll give an overview of the TEI process and walk you through the results of the study that was commissioned by AWS. So before we review the results of the study, just a quick disclosure. This study was commissioned by Amazon Web Services, and the interviewed customers were all provided by Amazon. Forrester does not endorse Amazon or its products. Forrester is an independent third party with editorial rights on this study, and we developed the study with data collected from the customers of Amazon that were interviewed. So TEI is a methodology that we use at Forrester, again, to articulate and justify the value of a technology investment. Forrester surveyed IT decision makers and asked them if they see value in developing a business case for their technology investment. And as you can see on the left-hand side here, over 90% agreed that it was important. The next question then becomes, why TEI? Traditionally, most organizations would do a TCO, or total cost of ownership study, to help articulate the value of cost and cost savings only. Others did an ROI, or return on investment study, to incorporate the business impact of technology investments, including benefits. But the TEI takes us a few steps further by incorporating a couple other components. So the TEI consists of 4 components. The first being benefits, which are the added revenue and business benefits that an organization experience. And then there's costs, which are essentially the upfront and ongoing costs of adopting a technology. And then there's flexibility, which here at Forrester we define as what helps to incorporate the strategic value of future investments enabled by the original investment. And then the last is risk, where across all 3 variables that I just mentioned, we adjust for the riskiness and uncertainty of that particular investment. So to complete this analysis, we did take a multi-step approach, which includes first conducting a full due diligence to understand what AWS EUC does as a solution, what is the marketing positioning of it, and what is the value proposition that it offers to its users and its customers. We then interviewed a number of users and implementers of the solution to understand the benefits and that they realize from their investment, and then the cost associated with that investment. And then we merged those interviewees to create what we call a composite organization, which is a fictional hypothetical organization based on the key characteristics of these interviewees. And then we created a financial model based on that composite organization to quantify the impact that the investment in AWS EUC had to this composite organization. And then finally, we wrote out that analysis in a case study in the end. So for this study, we interviewed 4 organizations. And you can see here, there was a global healthcare company, a professional services firm, a back office solution provider, and a global financial services company. Within these organizations, we spoke to various decision makers with roles ranging from the director of end user service, the principal architect, a chief risk and innovation officer, VP of infrastructure and security, a chief technology officer, and an associate director. For the interviewed customers, some of the challenges they experienced that drove them to make an investment in AWS EUC include, first, having challenges in maintaining an on-prem VDI environment themselves, which meant spending resources to install and maintain the environment, which are, these are resources that could have been deployed elsewhere. Second is, when thinking about scaling the environment, the costs often proved to be prohibitive, which meant the organization was limited in how they could use their VDI. And then finally, some interviewed organizations had strict operational and security requirements, especially if they operated in a highly regulated industry or at risk at being targeted for cybersecurity attacks, which heightened the need for the environment itself to be secure. One interviewed customer captured these pain points, sharing that expanding our previous VDI would mean investing in additional hardware. That would have taken a long time, taking away users and employees that could have been used to service clients. So there's definitely revenue implications to all of this. As a result of their investment in AWS EUC, interviewed customers noted first, increased gross profit from improved business agility, where having workspaces and AppStream meant being able to easily shift to remote work, to hybrid work, which, again, during the pandemic, for example, was a key differentiator between maintaining clients, even gaining new clients and new business versus the worst case scenario of going out of business. Second, faster onboarding of new workers, because being able to provision workspaces and AppStream accounts, as opposed to having to provide physical laptops to new hires, significantly shortened the onboarding process, which meant workers could be productive much sooner. Third, the ability to introduce BYOD, or bring your own device, to staff and contractors meant that organizations could significantly reduce, if not completely eliminate, the practice of purchasing physical laptops and desktops for their employees, which adds up to a significant cost saving. And then finally, recaptured IT staff time due to automation and AWS EUC being a fully managed service, where again, the fact that they don't have to maintain this EUC environment themselves means that those IT resources could be redeployed elsewhere. So again, the results of this study are based off what we call a composite organization, which, as I mentioned before, is a representative organization built from the aggregation of data points from the AWS EUC customers that we interviewed. So for this study, our composite organization has $500 million in annual revenue, 5,000 employees, of which half are AWS EUC users. We assume that they hire about 1,000 new contractors per year, and then they have 15 IT staff members managing EUC computing, which consists of laptops, desktops, and VDIs. So based on this composite, our TEI analysis determined a 3-year impact from investing in AWS EUC to be a return on investment of 282%, about $19.46 million in benefits, and $14.36 million in net present value. One customer shared that AWS EUC positioned them very well for today's reality of working anywhere, from any device, anytime. And they shared they have benefited from the increased agility and being able to set up a secure remote access environment. So again, based on that composite organization, we modeled the benefits that the organization will receive from their AWS EUC investment. And you can see here that this particular composite organization realized around $11.5 million in increased gross profit just from being more agile, about $5.7 million from faster time to productivity due to faster onboarding, $1.3 million in total cost of ownership saving from introducing a BYOD, or bring your own device, and then about $880,000 in increased IT staff productivity because of automation and the tool being a fully managed service. Let's dig into each benefit in more detail. So for the first benefit, interview decision makers noted that their investment in AWS EUC allowed their organizations to be more agile, which was they thought to be a competitive advantage. This agility means being able to stay in business, being able to retain existing clients, being able to gain new clients. With some interviewed decision makers noting their organizations growing as much as 30%. You can see on the quote here from a principal architect in a professional service organization saying that workspaces impact 75 to 80% of their business. Some of the major contracts that they won would not have happened without Workspace, because they would not have been able to quickly scale 15,000 users in a matter of week, which is what the project required. Forrester adjusted this benefit down by a risk factor of 20%. Recognizing that the size of the business that regularly uses AWS EUC, other technologies that might be implemented around the AWS EUC that could share attribution in improving agility and ease of scale, the existing knowledge of current staff members, and the overall structure and the business process of the organization could all impact the exact benefit any organization would receive from their investment in AWS EUC. So for this composite organization, this equated to a 3-year present value benefit of around $11.5 million in increased gross profit. The second benefit is interview decision makers shared that using AWS EUC helped their organizations onboard new workers faster, which meant those workers could be productive much sooner. They noted the time to onboard new hires before using AWS EUC could take weeks, maybe even months, and their investment essentially cut that time down to days by ensuring new hires had had access to the applications and desktops that they needed to be productive. You can see on the quote here from a director of end user service in healthcare, in their previous environment, they said that it could easily average weeks to months for a new contractor to get a PC. Whereas with AWS EUC, they can onboard an employee in as fast as 3 hours. So again, Forrester adjusted this benefit down by a risk factor of 10%, noting that the exact industry and work done by the organization, the number of new hires or contractors that an organization would onboard every year, the resources and capabilities that the HR department of that organization has, and the geographic presence an organization operates and acquires talents from are all factors that could impact how much an organization actually benefits from AWS EUC. But for this composite organization, this equated to a 3-year present value benefit of around $5.7 million. The third benefit, interviewed decision makers state that the scalability, the flexibility of implementing this tool meant that organizations could introduce this function and capability into more business units compared to a slightly more cautious approach when using an on-prem VDI. And so as a result, a larger percentage of organizations' business units could provide a BYOD model to their staff, or bring your own device. In certain circumstances, this allowed organizations to completely eliminate the costs that they initially had spent to provision physical laptops. You can see here a CTO in financial service talking about in their previous environment, they could spend about $1 million annually for physical PCs and another $1.5 million annually for server storage and networking. And then with their investment in AWS EUC, they have been able to avoid about 40% of their operational costs. Well, first, on average, the interviewed customer shared about a 60% reduction in total cost of ownership since implementing AWS EUC. And again, Forrester adjusted this benefit down by a risk factor of 10%, again, recognizing that security and operational requirements that may prevent the adoption of BYOD, the nature of the work and how the laptops and devices are used, supply chain and procurement capabilities of an organization can all impact the exact benefit that any organization would get from their investment. But for this composite organization, this equated to a 3-year present value benefit of around $1.3 million in cost savings. Finally, the last benefit is interviewed decision makers highlighted that AWS EUC, being a fully managed service, eliminated a lot of support and maintenance work that their EUC IT staff had to do, if they were using an on-prem VDI solution. The tool being a true desktop as a service cloud offering meant introducing automations in the infrastructure management and capacity planning process for tasks that their IT staff previously routinely had to do. Related to BYOD, setting up things like workspaces and AppStream accounts for end users was significantly faster than provisioning laptops, which again opened up the IT team's time to be reallocated to presumably more value-add work. You can see a quote by an associate director in financial services here saying that if they had to provision physical laptops to 100% of their employees working remotely during the pandemic, they would have needed about 4 to 6 more engineers, and then another 2 to 3 engineers in the back end, and another 2 to 3 other people to run and support that effort, which for this organization probably represents about 35 to 40% additional manpower that they now avoided because they use AWS EUC. On average, interviewees shared that about 45% of their time are recaptured from no longer provisioning laptops, and about 25% of their time are recaptured from no longer having to do EUC maintenance and things like security patch in-house. Forrester adjusted this benefit down by a risk factor of 10%, recognizing that the size of the organization, the IT staff managing the EUC environment, the capabilities of that IT staff, and the state of that prior environment before investing in AWS could all impact the exact benefit that an organization would get. But for this composite organization, this equated to a 3-year present value benefit of around $880,000 from recaptured time saving. In addition to the three quantified benefits, the interviewed organizations and decision makers also talked about other impactful benefits that unfortunately they were not able to quantify, which includes first ensuring a secure and agile environment. Interviewed decision makers said that the security that accompanies their newfound flexibility and scalability was definitely a key differentiator from AWS EUC. One VP of infrastructure and security at a back office solution firm said that from a security perspective, this tool provided an isolation layer. So while technically, obviously, there's still a risk of being hacked, the probability is significantly lower than if you provision laptops for people to bring home. The second benefit is partnership and collaboration with AWS ecosystem, where interviewees noted that the integration and overall compatibility that AWS EUC offers with other tools and solutions under the AWS and Amazon ecosystem was another key benefit. One interviewee noted that one of the benefits of working with an Amazon tool is that the system management is very straightforward from tool to tool. It's consistent, intuitive, and provides feedback when you make mistakes. And additionally, they added that AWS support was very helpful whenever we faced any kind of challenges. And then lastly, improved EUC user experience. Interviewees said that the users of these workspace and AppStream had better experiences compared with their previous experience using an on-prem VDI. They noted fewer disruptions using this tool. A principal architect at a professional service firm said that we definitely have had fewer disruptions than we had with our previous VDI environment, where the previous on-prem VDI was having problems every week or every other week. Also included in the study is an in-depth discussion of costs, where we identified and quantified a number of cost components for the composite organization based on conversations with these interviewed customers, which are costs related to AWS EUC, so AWS EUC's fees, as well as internal costs related to implementation, support, and ongoing management. So the costs related to, so the AWS EUC fees are essentially all the costs that an implementing organization would pay to the vendor, so Amazon or AWS, whereas the internal costs covers all the expenditures an organization spends internally to implement and maintain AWS EUC at their organization. So hopefully that gave you a taste on key insights that you can find from this TEI study. If you are interested in learning more behind the actual math and dig deeper into some of our assumptions, the full study goes into all that detail along with a discussion of our methodology. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me or the Total Economic Impact team at Forrester. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share this and your attention, and I will pass it back to Yvonne.
Thank you so much, Adi and Will, for your terrific insights on end-user computing, VDI, and how to achieve economic value. If anyone from the audience would like to read the full TEI study, it's published on the AWS End-User Computing website. And so this concludes the presentation segment. And with the few minutes we have left, we will open up the line for audience questions.